late. This is the session on Data Product Developers Guide. And we have had a working group in NASA as part of the Earth Science Data System working groups to develop a guide document that helps data producers generate products that are more easily usable by the users. And if you don't know my name, let me mention it. My name is Ramapriyan, and myself and Peter Leonard are co-chairs of this working group. And I should mention why we are talking about this in the ESIP meeting rather than just within NASA. And so we are one of the Earth Science Data System working groups. We have been active since April 2018. The original idea for this working group came from Chris Linus, and who is going to give us a few words of motivation for this working group after I'm done introducing the session. He, Nathan, James, and John Moses are points of contact in the Estes project. And the purpose of this working group is to help data product developers make data more easily usable by end users. And right now we've got version 0.3 of this document, and it's now ready for initial release for a limited community review. And all of you who are sitting in this room form that limited community, along with the 30-ish members of the Data Product Developers Guide working group. So the purpose of today's session is to briefly introduce the document and its motivation and content, expose content and ideas to the community here, and so beyond the NASA community, or beyond the NASA working group. And the rest of the session, we're going to have only about 15 minutes worth of talking. After that, the rest of the session is going to be focused on breaking us into subgroups who will review individual sections. And the sections have been divided based on thematic considerations, and we'll talk about it more. So here is the agenda. I had allocated 3 minutes to myself, and Chris about 7 minutes, Peter about 15 minutes, and then sign up for subgroups and breakout review session for about 45 minutes. Then get back, and each of the subgroups will talk about what they found and identify this session's key takeaways. So if you don't do anything, please copy down the 2 bit.ly links on this. And so you want to be able to locate the document. That's at the first one, NASA_DPDG_2019-07-11. That was the release date of that version 0.3. And please open with Google Docs. If you open with Google Docs, anyone that has a link can comment on the document. Comment but not edit, because we want to gather all the comments and then take care of editing ourselves. So we're going to break out into subgroups. Each subgroup takes on 1 or 2 sections to review. And I think we have pre-allocated sections to 4 different subgroups. I think we have enough people here that we can do 4 groups with sufficient population to be meaningful. And the subgroups should identify a lead person to debrief the full group at the end of the meeting. And please copy this bottom URL, ESIP 2019_DPDG_notes. And that's where you'll be making high-level comments about the document to help with the debriefing. So the regular comments on the document itself go in the URL that's given at the top, and the summary comments go at the bottom, on the bottom URL. So with that, I think I'm going to hand off to Chris.
And we'll come back. Actually, you can keep that up there because I got no slide.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't have any slides.
Yeah, okay. I can keep that up then.
Right. So while I wave my, so I'm just going to wave my arms. I
but wave your arm standing here.
Oh, that's right. So do we have anybody online besides
Yes,
Peter?
Peter, yeah.
Okay. Peter knows all this stuff. All right.
Well,
So,
Chris,
yeah.
it looks we have somebody named Ellie Davis online as well. So
Oh,
there's two.
cool. All right. She is with us in person as well.
Never mind.
All right. So take the long view of EOSDIS. Way back in the day, it was all about just making the data available. And once the data were available, we started worrying about making it findable. And then easier to sort of access. And we've been working on interoperability, working on reusability, and especially the usability part of that reusability aspect. It's been getting better over the years, but what we've discovered is that it's still very easy to make a data product that's not usable. It's much harder to make a data product that is usable. And it turns out you need to follow a lot of different, there's a lot of different rules and tricks and standards and conventions, and some of those not even written down anywhere. Some of them are written down, but they're written down in many, many places. And to give you an idea of how many places that kind of information is written down, I'm going to bring up okay, so this is the version 0.3 of the Data Product Developers Guide. And I'm just going to skip down to the references section to give you just an idea of, where, does this skip here? That doesn't quite skip.
No, I don't think it's thinkable.
All right, so we'll just scroll down. Gives you an idea of the scope of the document too. So this is the bibliography. This is still the bibliography. And in fact, it turns out we've got more than 80 references. And so if you're this poor data product developer and you're trying to put in a good faith effort to make a really nicely designed, usable data product, you have a big task in front of you. And so what we wanted to do was to make that easier for the poor data product developer, to bring together all of this information into one place, more or less logically organized, we hope, with some clear instructions on what to do. And I will tell you, in many cases, the document is, as we say in standards world, opinionated. We feel that's a good thing, but we're also open to discussing those opinions. And so that was the aim of this Data Product Developers Guide, is to bring everything together into one place at the right level of detail, we hope, with links out to, as you can see, 82 plus references, but also to make this guide itself a usable guide towards making data products. And so that's my brief motivational speech. Does everybody have the links, by the way? And Peter had some slides too he wanted to talk to? All right. So we've been working on this. Rama and Peter Leonard have really been leading it the last year or so, I think. I did this sort of 0.01 version and then kind of handed it off to the group. And since then, they've been really whipping it into shape.
Let's see, how do I get to that other document?
Do that open thing again on PowerPoint, file open.
File open?
Yeah, I think that's how we found it on my Mac.
Oh. Okay.
There you go.
Okay, Peter.
Okay, thank you. Yes, if you go to the first slide, the title slide, I slapped this together very early this morning, and I just put my name on this because to protect the innocent, because nobody else reviewed it first. So I take responsibility for the content of this presentation. Second slide. Maybe we should go to slideshow mode.
Okay, let me see. Here, yeah, here it is. Right.
It's across the top. Or you can do it that way.
here, that. Okay.
Okay, what I should have added here was a motivation that was kind of given by Rama and Chris, and I'll give it one line motivation. This Data Product Developers Guide is to help data producers produce level 2, level 3, and level 4 products that are to be archived at a DAC. That's the purpose of the document, but there are a lot of people who don't archive at a DAC who could find this useful. So history, conceived by Chris Lennis, and Chris just called it version 0.01 or something. I'm calling it 0.0, which was probably produced over a period of months, but I'm suggesting that it was finalized, the version 0.0 finalized in March 2018. And then in April 2018, there was these Earth Science Data Systems working groups, which are overseen by Estes, and the Data Product Developers Guide working group was formed in April 2019, and we spent a full year on that, and taking Chris's Google Doc, and we produced a version 0.1 in April 2019, which was a lot of contributors, and the editors were Rama, myself, and Siri Yoda. Kelsa was important in getting this thing whipped into shape. And then we produced a version 0.2, which was a one-voice rewrite by Jessica Welch at Oak Ridge, with the help of Rama and I, editorial help. And that was supposed to be released broadly, but personally I wasn't happy with it, and so it had a very limited release. And now that we're in the fourth month of year 2 of the working group, we did a lot of additional rewriting, and we've released version 0.3 on July 11th, and I'm calling it the 7-Eleven version, because it was released on July 11th, and that's still a limited release. It's released to 2 audiences. The working group will comment, and it's also being released today to this ESIP session, which actually includes several members of the working group, I believe. So this Google Doc release is for collecting comments, and I think actually, well, first of all, you should log into Google before you try to do anything with that Google Doc. And you can also edit it, but it's not the real guide. It's a Google Doc, which is meant for collecting comments. So this version 0.3 is open for comment to a limited audience, and the comments from this session today and from the working group, which will be collected over a period of 2 weeks, the editors will take these comments and produce 0.4, and at some point, I hope we don't have a 0.5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So at some point, we'll get to a version 1.0, which will be submitted to the Estes Standards Office for a broad community review via their RFC process. Next slide, please.
Yeah, by the way, I want to mention that the room has about 25 to 30 people.
Splendid. So I was supposed to go over the guide, but with only 15 minutes, that's not possible. I do have a table of contents, and I'm not going to recite everything here. I'm just saying between the version 0.2 to 0.3, I rewrote the introduction and reduced its length. I rewrote selection 3, selecting the data product format, and reduced its length. And there were a lot of things in there that I wasn't happy with. Section 5, which was written by Alexander Jelinek, who may be in the room. It was very nicely written. Jessica rewrote it. It seemed like it was at too high a level for a beginner. That one may need to be have some work done on it, but I didn't have a chance to work on that. And Section 12 glossary, that wasn't in version 0.2, was in version 0.3, and Appendix B and C were in version 0.2, and Ed Armstrong made some improvements for version 0.3. Yeah, it's a big guide. Okay, let me go to my final slide, please. And so I have some questions or some things to consider as you people take a look at this Google Doc. These are things that have been brought up at meetings, and I can't claim credit for anything except for the final one. So first bullet, should there be an executive summary? If this guide is too long, people aren't going to read it, and they might want a quick guide, quick summary, which would be part of the release, but it would be a lot easier to get through. Second bullet, should this data product developer's guide be more focused on beginners? It's kind of uneven. Parts of it are suitable for beginners. Some parts of it are kind of advanced, and beginners may struggle trying to figure out what's going on. And third bullet, I think this is several people mentioned this. There probably should be more figures and diagrams included. And anybody, the fourth bullet, if you have any specific suggestions, then I would say comment in the Google Doc. Say, I think a figure would fit in well here on what a swath diagram or something like that. Now, bullet 5, Ed Armstrong's appendices B and C. I think they're beautiful, clean, concise, helpful. But we had a telecon, a working group telecon, a DPDG working group telecon 2 weeks ago, and there were several voices saying that these appendices are kind of long, especially Appendix B, and they would. A lot of people spoke up and saying we prefer an appendix that focuses more on mandatory attributes. So let me say Appendix B is file level attributes, and Appendix C is variable level attributes. So Appendix B got a lot of attention at our last telecon, and there was a strong sentiment to focus on mandatory attributes, which vary from DAC to DAC. And so that's something to keep in mind. And if for some reason the majority find that appendices B and C on the attributes are too long, I think we could package those into a RFC document. I mentioned DIWG, that's the Dataset Interoperability Working Group, which is another working group, ESDIS working group, ESDS working group, and I think those two appendices could be packaged and submitted to ESO as a separate RFC document, and that way there would be that would be a form of validation of these lists of attributes. That's all I have to say right now, and we got started late, and my presentation was short, so I made up for the lost time. Are there any questions? Is either is Ed Armstrong or Alan Doyle present to comment on the final bullet?
Neither of them is here. Alexander is not here either, nor is Ed Armstrong. Ed Armstrong had told me earlier that he may not be able to make it to the session because he has some other conflicting thing that's high priority for him. So, so I think we are ready to, I don't see any hands going up with questions.
Rama,
So,
Rama, can I ask you a question about the final bullet? Does this make sense to you? If Appendix B and C are found to be way too long for the beginner, that maybe we submit them, Ed Armstrong submits them to ESO as a separate RFC, request for comments document?
Why don't we see what the opinion of the editors is with respect to what how it is now, before we decide what corrective action.
Okay. So did you hear what Chris said?
Yes, I heard that. Makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So at this point, I think we are ready to, if I can manage this.
Do you have a slide with the suggested breakouts?
Yes. I don't have a slide with the suggested breakouts. I have the document, the Google Doc.
I have a slide with the breakouts.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
Oh, okay. It's already there.
Where's our Google Drive here? Well, I mean, I just put it together, so.
The Google Doc I had there does talk about the different sections and different people.
Right, so here was the idea we have for breaking out. I wish I could put the other, let's see, I want Peter's. Okay. So these are the chapters. Let's get rid of that. And this is the sort of suggested split.
Can't have them both on at the same time.
That's such a tiny screen.
Yeah.
Wait, did we have his slide there? There, okay, there it is. All right, it's a little hard to read, but I can read them out. All right, so we had this idea that we would split up into 4 groups. Those of you that are kind of generalists might be interested in basically taking a look at the first 2 chapters, the introduction and what's involved in designing. So those of you that are generalists, is this on? Is this on now? Okay, now it's on. So if you're a generalist, like you're not an expert in any of these chapters, we've got chapters 1 and 2, the introduction and the design process. You don't need to be an expert. You just sort of need to think, put yourself in the shoes of someone trying to make a data product. And also chapter 8, which is product delivery and publication. So they don't require special expertise in the sort of details of some of this stuff for generalists. Now, if you're format fans, I'm looking at you, Elena. I'm looking at you, Mike. There's probably a few more of you in there. Then sections 3 through 5 are for you. Selecting a data product format, metadata, data chunking and compression. Actually, that's right. We could have 2. Now, if you're a metadata maven, who here's a metadata maven? Deborah. All right, well, you can be one of our data makers. Do we have any metadata mavens here? All right, and I will help on that one. All right, thanks, Robert. And so metadata mavens obviously want to read chapter 4 on metadata, but also appendix B, which is important global attributes. And maybe, I don't know if we'll even get to important variable attributes, but if we do, so much the better. And then for the data makers, chapters 6 through 8. So this is what kinds of tools you can use for developing products and testing them, DOIs, product delivery and publication. So we get, in some cases, we'll have 2 groups editing or commenting on one chapter, and that's fine, that's great. But I'd suggest 6 through 8 and Appendix A, product testing with data tools. Any questions? Anyone can't find yourself up there in some form? All right, so we're going to split up in areas of the room, I gather, right?
Yeah, so probably 2 groups, one there and one there.
Yeah, I think us metadata mavens might be over here on the small side. All right, let me do a show of hands. So who here is going to be the generalist group? Raise them high. All right, so what is that? That's about 10? Okay, so you guys are definitely going to want to be over on this side. Who are format fans? Hey, that's pretty good. Maybe we'll have you guys over on that side. Metadata mavens? Actually, that's pretty good too. And data makers. Right, so let's have the data makers and the metadata mavens over here, and the other 2 groups over here, generalists and format fans. And so again, the idea is to go to that document, and we will bring up the, yeah, so remember you have to sign in to Google Docs in order to be able to actually see them the way they're supposed to be seen and to edit them. So the document is this here. And then if you want to, yes, sure, go ahead and capture the notes, but really what we're gonna also be able to do is take a look at the different comments that were made in order to pull out our takeaways. Yes. Yes, although we have extracted the metadata, we've extracted the Word document to this Google Doc.
Yeah. You need to make sure that you have the right version. So this links,
yeah,
that link up there is the right version.
Yes, it's the right version. The 711 version.
Yeah.
It's on the title page.
And one more comment I want to make is that you don't necessarily have to be affiliated with NASA or this working group to be able to get in there and make comment. It'll be very useful if we get a broader community look at it.
Because that's the whole point of us doing it here.
Right.
So, and also be opinionated. Opinionated is good for this kind of, I know we got no problems with you, Patrick. You're good at that. But everybody else, no matter how shy you are or, whatever, this is your chance to be opinionated on what it takes to make a good data product developer's guide so that we can have data sets that are truly fair in the sense of, usable by that end user community. All right. Shift
Yes,
up,
Steve.
Steve.
Question, just say again, how do I make sure that I'm looking at the right version?
That should point you to the right
This-
version. The one that
This
says,
bit.ly link. All right.
so time
What
to
do-
break
what do we
up.
say now?
Yeah.
Generalists, format fans, right?
Mm-hmm.
Metadata mavens, data makers. Which one are you
So
going to be in? Or are you going to rove around and see how they're doing?
I think I'll rove.
All right.
I'm not
You
an
don't need the
expert on,
microphone for that anymore, right?
yeah, no. I'm not an expert on anything, so.
Also, if you guys want to have, pull any of these things up for discussion, we can discuss these things as well. So it's a group activity.
Yep. Can you just give
So,
it her?
I may
Yes,
might
Peter.
leave the meeting at this point.
Okay,
All
Peter,
right, thanks, Peter.
thank you for joining us.
No problem.
Data, metadata mavens, data makers, data makers. So let's see, 12:45. So we're going to do this until 2 o'clock. And 2 to 2:15 is the time devoted to getting back together and summarizing what each subgroup found. But please make sure that you open the bottom URL as well and put down summary comments to share with the group, full group.
Well, I just raised it. I like the intended audience that you mentioned that this could be useful for this too. And then when you get into the scope, where you get so levels centric, sounds like we're really just talking about what's sensitive audience. Seems like there's a conceptual piece here. There's all kinds of possibilities. Universal, right? I was drifting out thinking about possibly inserting a root. What do you say? You might be able to cut down some of the text and say particular, or this primarily to developers or policies that we can organize. It does kind of conflict with the number 2-4, because in my mind, the product's not here. Once it gets to number 3, or definitely 4, it's not here on sale product. That's from down to 3 weeks ago. But now, I think it's probably more indicated. I did stick for a living. We're the oddball. I know you're not. That's one more. I don't think we have to refine the formulation either. That's not to get started on part of the offer. That's not to say something like what you just said.
And so, I mean, we could make it clear that the guide is for developers of sensors.
Geophysical data. Yeah, that's another question too. Is it going to be level 1 or level 2? Because there are all these sensors. Yeah. Oh, I mean, and it would be fair to say we're not touching that. I guess the reflections. I mean, you still have the text situation. I see. So that's centralized. However, we would like to inspire.
This is usually happens. So I'm trying to choose the one vehicle that solves everything. It's like you never get done. Okay, I'll have this chunk. It's not that we can have so.
lens of, in particular, this guide is primarily intended for one last thing on section one, something that might be helpful would be like a reader's identify some stakeholders. And it might be useful to say, okay, you are trying to define the technical specification of your product. Okay, to identify what metadata requirements. All right, my name. Okay. I'll put it in the high level. So, yeah. In the high level.
That's the
DPTG sessions.
voice.
Whole factor starts analyzing it, finds calibration errors. And the point data gives the viewpoint on it that no one else can. Like, it's the look at errors, instrumentation,
So where you put that though, it says down very important.
and they don't understand. And the docs-
Oh.
Remember, it's a place where this is.
Maybe you just copy and take out the numbers. What can be, should be improved?
Yeah, we
Understand it.
Yes, exactly. That's
Yeah, yeah, it's involving knowledge about the data set that you.
Well,
But it struck me, I didn't see
But I
it.
think just having that as a limited activity, the number two contact the comments and data.
But you can insert, maybe you have to check the system. All capture on ingest.
Let's capture on ingest.
How that is. What? It's not, you know, I've got heat on capture on ingest, but it comes from the corporate source.
well,
Independent of this document.
There are different types of quality information. There may be some quality information inside the product itself. And there may be external quality information. So there's some quality information inside the product. It's quality control. Right? So it's the quality flags. The quality flags. And the retrospective quality of an end user seeing problems with the product. That's more than that.
In this case, it was
go into-
producer finding its own problem.
some bags have quote unquote no issues.
Yeah.
So we don't have a common mechanism for somebody who sees that to send that comment to.
There's a lot of comment checkers. Well, I guess that's generally what they use for have, if you've got all your looking for information, it's moving towards capture the feature of in some consistent manner, establish a consistent way of doing it across tabs.
Yeah. Okay, so the answer is you can't hold it, hold it up, hold it a little bit most of the time. We may at some point, there's certain quality. I was thinking for that level, yeah.
So that's how that session went perfect.
Oh, yeah, so.
Docs that are open. Such as common workflow, forms, and then you have science and
First one says vegetables and services.
Right.
I would work it out.
I see. Yeah.
It's his work, so I don't think we have a recommendation yet in the form that they wrote. That's not. That's what we have.
Is that?
Yeah, create a whole section of your picture.
Well, I recently, there's nothing just follow this. Stated on one side. Point that, and then later that changes. Just later. So, how much we don't. What do I call it? It doesn't talk about the whole thing. It's help too.
It's good feedback. Oh, that's nothing.
I think
That's always a comment.
when you write it, it's. I would say.
Yeah, so level 3 in section 1. In section 1, that kind of portions of it after the first week.
Oh, no, that was just like your. I said level 1. Yes, level 0 is you completely outside this.
I would make that comment. This is some of our.
Where does it, doesn't talk about cost?
Because in section 1, that
Or in terms of.
yeah, it's each section is full.
It's one of those hard things.
Oh. Hmm. Oh, no.
I'd like to comment.
Right, so going out to where you put in the 1 or 2, that would be part of metadata that should be embedded in the product, but not discoverability metadata, or observational metadata. Yeah.
Level 1A.
I'm kind of struggling because, my understanding from you is that they feel it's necessary to explain another way to observation because there's so many different ways that they use. So they kind of say, that's the problem. And that's and I'm kind of asking the question.
The other one is.
From the community's point of view, they actually thought about that.
Not all data.
Yeah. Of course, that might also change over time.
That's there's two ways I can do that. One is that not all information is this more or this is CMR.
So the usage information, makes clear. The usage information is basically very. So we only just
That it should be on.
We might want to verify.
Yes.
You just saw this paragraph about it. It's a very exhaustive list of people.
He said above, not all of the above. Which is great. And all this stuff too is
I would just say, I just like to there's a shift in direction.
So I'd like to draw your attention to the time. We had allocated until 2 o'clock for doing this. We could probably go for another 5 minutes after that, but it's probably time for you guys to think about who will be the spokesperson for each of the subgroups so that they can give a summary to the full group. Uh-huh.
Most of them are pretty good about putting in the notes.
Okay.
Just poll each group for your general impression.
All right. Okay.
Each one of them has somebody that will, nobody speaks up. I'll just call them.
Okay. All right.
We know everybody here.
Sure.
Maximize discoverability through collating all this metadata together. My experience is that they would be less concerned with that capability because they're more concerned about just putting everything clearly in stack and making sure it's interchangeable. So when I read that sentence, I kind of see eyes glossing over, where it says not, that at present not all is just more of a source code. Now, what do they need or the exact manager might read that to mean like grades straight information? No, but from a data perspective, I don't know that they would care all that much about that. It depends who you're targeting. If you're targeting DAC managers, they would know that.
The only reason it's in there is the concern that papers
Because I jumped ahead to A just to have a quick.
there was something that I knew.
Oh, and I don't.
Feel free to move. Oh, I see it.
I am moving these comments into the folder. Right, but it's the section without that link. Link isn't really. And they could say, once this, for now, we use the applicable procedures that you have. In the future, you just need to define perfect procedures for applying your I'm sure that that is working. I always feel happy by showing this. Yeah, exactly. Eliminate as much as you can. Great, great, good job.
Biggest. I'd like to be common sense and that's. Is the writing clear? I think the writing's pretty clear.
Sure, I'm writing. Okay, is the document useful? Definitely. Okay, so who's our subgroup lead? You're already standing up.
What? But it's got, I gotta save my voice when I talk about this. It's also easy. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what you want. Is that what sweet is?
Short pages. Long pages. Yeah. Like one more.
Sweet skirt. Skirt load is actually not so good.
Okay, pencils down. So what I'd like to do is just go around and call each group. I'm going to ask you 2 questions. The first question is this document useful? The second question is, what's the worst thing you saw in what you were doing that needs to be fixed? And I'm going to start with this group over here. Deborah?
The title, because I was just writing a comment on there. Earth Data Pub Info Group is working on using same terminology across everything. And it's called the DMP template for DPs, data producers. And Earth Data Pub's using the word data producer. We're all trying to retrain ourselves. Data producer is what Elfrida said she wanted us to use, and that's what's written in a lot of the documentation she's just recently redone. So this is not the data product developer's guide, it's the data product producer's guide.
Or is it the development guide for data producers?
Yes. Data product development guide.
Okay.
It is that.
All right, the title, good. Okay, next I'm going to call on you. Okay, is this useful? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Any thumbs down? Okay, what's the worst thing you've found? The thing that needs to be fixed the fastest?
What must be fixed immediately?
What must be fixed immediately, we decided unanimously, should be the better integration of an ongoing dialogue with users after the data's in the wild.
You guys have that written down somewhere?
Yes.
Excellent. We actually had a similar thing over here. This is what's interesting, is I know that there were similarities in what the data makers found and what you guys found with respect to having a kind of a roadmap through the document for different kinds of readers. And then here we had the same thing about that dialogue, although it was about data quality, but similar to what you guys were thinking. All right, data format, guys.
Yeah.
Was it useful? Useful, I'd say yes. Yeah, I'd say it's useful. But yeah,
We asked you.
yeah, there's useful, but you could get people in a lot of trouble if they followed some of your advice.
All right, give me an example.
Well, on the chunking, there's this sort of direct thing about, it says the most important thing to consider in chunking is the chunk cache, and that's not true. That's not generally true. It's true in a few cases, but not generally true. It makes that's
All right.
But we found
Glad we got you guys looking at it.
knowing the advantages and disadvantages of various things that they're talking about, not just the chunking, but some of the others, was probably the biggest concern that we had.
It's hard to make decision which format to choose. So for decision making, right?
Yeah, right, yeah.
You know, if it were me, I would just say net CDN4 for
Well,
everybody. That's just me.
It may be easy with
All right. There's only one group left, right? Did we get all? All right. Metadata mavens. Useful, non-useful, thumbs up, thumbs down? All right. And what's the worst thing you guys found? Just too many to choose from?
I'll break the ice. So as I read from the introduction, I didn't get too far down. I got maybe halfway down from the introduction of section 4. But as I began to read from the introduction, the overview part, it carried with it the impression that there's an importance for rich metadata and standardized metadata, preferably within the granule itself, which is, I think, what most of us here already agree with inherently. But as you read further down, it becomes clear that it becomes very CMR centric, and where I think which is good just to a degree, but where the data producer can get lost in the weeds. Because I know from a NASA DAC perspective, we're very familiar with the CMR capabilities, but from a data producer perspective, they may not quite understand the downstream capabilities of CMR and what rich standardized metadata can actually give them down the road with these capabilities. So one thing that I saw that would be helpful, we touched on it a little bit here, would be maybe some kind of a table that shows what are the capabilities that can be leveraged by CMR using this rich metadata versus the capabilities that we plan to have down the road. Because we obviously don't have all the capabilities that we want to have right now, but things that can kind of give them a glimpse of future capabilities, I think would be helpful.
All right, thank you. You have that written down somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Have you written that down?
I'll write it in the main.
All right,
The main notes.
do you want to say something about it?
Well, I was just going to agree with that statement. I think that, particularly as we move more towards cloud computing paradigms, the metadata for like at the variable name and so on are really important to be able to put that in those types of frameworks and actually use the data. I mean, it's very important just to be able to get it on your desktop and use it, but it's also very important in that way. And if CMR, there are places where we could add things to CMR, like the variable information, that would actually make that even easier to actually use. So anyway.
All right, cool, thanks. All right, and with that, I think that's time to call time, isn't it?
Time to call time, but just
Type-
one comment. I know many of you have been typing it in the documents, in the main document, and your high-level comments that you have made and any additional comments you want to make at a high level, it'll be great if you could continue to populate the notes pages. And you can do it until tonight or something like that, and we'll take note of all of that. And thank you all for participating. Deborah. The next steps are going to be, the document is going to be reviewed also by the Data Product Developers Working Group over the next couple of weeks. And right after that, the editing team is going to take all the comments and try to integrate all of that and then make it into version 0.4 and have a broader review of that before even submitting it to ESO for the review. The broader review is going to be the DACs and the measures teams and folks like that. Uh-huh. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So At some point, it's going to go to the ESO as a document for the usual very broad review that ESO holds. So
Before that, I think, it's not like those large projects, but also maybe not big enough.
okay, okay. All right, thank you. And those of you who are not directly associated with NASA, I appreciate all your comments here as well. And hopefully this document will become more broadly useful than just for the NASA data producers. That was the main purpose of holding this meeting here.
I just want to thank everybody for trying this kind of a new format for doing sessions. So don't be afraid to also, write in the eventual ESIP evaluations how well this format worked for what we were trying to do. All right, and thank you very much.